Rebellion, the death of a nation, and birth of the children of God. Allow me to preface this video with a few scriptures. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek. Romans 1:16. For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Romans 2:28-29. I did this because I feel that it is imperative for those who are physical descendants of Israel to know their true nationality, history, and heritage, which has been stolen from us. This is found in Psalm 83, 1-4, and Jeremiah 17:4. However, I feel that it is also important to state that knowing these facts does not diminish the value of our brothers and sisters who are children of Abraham and heirs to the promise through faith in Messiah. This is found in Galatians 3:7. Recent events in American history in regards to the mistreatment, discrimination, marginalization, oppression, and outright murder of members of the so-called African American population underscore the tribulation and anguish that blacks continue to suffer in this country. Deuteronomy 14:2 tells us the Jews are the chosen people of God. However, Deuteronomy 28 also tells us of the curse God's chosen people would be placed under for their disobedience and rebellion against God. For discussion purposes, we will specifically look at verses 64-66 and how these things apply to blacks in America today. Verse 64 declares, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth, even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." When we break down the current Jewish population in Israel by paternal country of origin, when taken separately, the largest percentage of the population trace their paternal lineage to Russia, which means that they are actually Khazar Ashkenazi Jews. However, it should be noted that the second largest percentage of the population traces their paternal lineage country to Morocco, which is located in West Africa. There are also those whose roots are found in Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Ethiopia, and other nations which are all located in Africa as well. This adds credence to the fact that some of the children of Israel who were people of color migrated into Africa, some of which were eventually brought to America on slave ships, just as Deuteronomy 28 verse 68 declares, where their connection to their Hebrew roots were suppressed and finally eliminated. Many of the slaves who were brought to America spoke African language dialects like Bantu and Mandinka, as well as Arabic and Hebrew. However, plantation owners preferred the communication skills among slaves remain rudimentary because this strengthened their control over them. Therefore, speaking any African tribal languages was strictly forbidden. Many of the slaves' traditions and attitudes were also very Semitic, but were suppressed by their European masters as well. Black Americans today represent part of the African diaspora of the Hebrew people who were scattered to the four corners of the earth and made to serve other gods. Verses 65 and 66 declare, "And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind. and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. All one has to do is look at the current news events involving police killings of unarmed black men, or the disparity in sentencing and incarceration for blacks imprisoned in America, to realize that the curses of Deuteronomy 28 dramatically represent an astonishingly accurate description of the plight of African Americans. The latest orchestrated ritual killing of 9 people in a black church simply because they were black also shows that so-called African Americans fear day and night for their lives and have no assurance of life here in America. Now we will examine this event so that we may gain spiritual insight into what it truly signifies. 6/17/15. A white man walked into a historic African American church in Charleston, South Carolina, and opened fire during a Bible study class, killing 9 people.
First now to the U.S., where police in South Carolina are searching for a man behind a church shooting. And the suspect, a young white man, opened fire inside a church in Charleston, killing 9 people. Police say they believe the shooting at this historic African American church is a hate crime.
It is important to remember that on 5/17/2015, 9 people were killed in the biker brawl in Waco, Texas.
These 9 people are dead and more injured in a gunfight between a group of rival biker gangs near Waco, Texas.
Interestingly enough, there were 9 people killed in Baltimore during Memorial Day weekend, 5/25/2015.
It has been a bloody holiday weekend, a surge of shootings and murders across the city as police scrambling to respond to the violence.
Vic, 2 more homicides give the city its deadliest month since 1999. A Memorial Day weekend riddled with gun violence across Baltimore City, from one district to the next, leaving 26 people shot and 9 dead.
Because these incidents occurred consecutively, we can see a pattern of 999 or 666 death sacrifices. When we take a look at the numbers surrounding the South Carolina shooting, again the 999 pattern shows up, which is a signal that this event was orchestrated. The police received a 911 call at 9:05. 9 times 5 is 45. 4 plus 5 equals 9. We have been told that the suspect was given a .45 caliber gun on his birthday. Again, 4 plus 5 equals 9. The suspect also killed 9 people. This gives us a 999 or upside down 666 embedded in this incident. It should be noted that the shooter was also arrested on 6/18/15 or 66666. At the very surface, these orchestrated ritual killings are primarily meant to bludgeon the population into submission through the repeated trauma of these shootings so that they eventually grow tired and willingly give up their Second Amendment rights to bear arms.
We don't have all the facts, but we do know that, once again, innocent people were killed in part because someone who wanted to inflict harm had no trouble getting their hands on a gun. Now is the time for mourning and for healing. But let's be clear. At some point, we as a country will have to reckon with the fact that this type of mass violence does not happen in other advanced countries. It doesn't happen in other places with this kind of frequency. And it is in our power to do something about it.
The secondary aim of these mass shooting events is meant to ignite a race war to divide and eventually destroy the country.
The fact that this took place in a black church obviously also raises questions about a dark part of our history. This is not the first time that black churches have been attacked.
Black leaders and black luminaries in the theology field have made their way toward this church. This Church is a very important place, very important church in the black community, and certainly it's going to be a flashpoint going forward.
Even still, the Most High is always in control of everything that happens, and the spiritual significance of these events overshadows and crushes that which the enemy attempts to achieve. Let's take a look at the significance of the church itself. The church was led by Senator and Reverend Clementa Pinckney. Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, where this shooting took place, has been a presence in Charleston since 1816. The church grew out of the Free African Society, which developed out of the rise of civic organizing following American independence in 1776 and the Revolutionary War. It was formed by former slaves to provide assistance for the economic, educational, social, and spiritual needs of the African community. These Africans and former slaves are the descendants of the children of Israel who fled into West Africa after the destruction of the Jewish temple in 70 AD and were eventually sold into slavery. More proof that the children of Israel and Judah were scattered all over the world, including Africa and the islands, can be found in Isaiah 11:11. Remember, the church was formed in 1816. The date 1816 in South Carolina, as it pertains to black people, is important because of the July 4th incident of 1816, which was an insurrection plotted by slaves in Camden, South Carolina. A number of slaves in Camden actively embarked on a plot for armed rebellion. The slaves who planned the revolt were found guilty and hanged. This precedent set at Camden was later to be followed in Charleston's Denmark Vesey trials, which occurred in 1822. Denmark Vesey was a freed man and carpenter in Charleston who plotted a massive slave rebellion involving thousands of slaves on nearby plantations. It is very important to note that the planning for this insurrection was held in the very same church where this shooting took place.
Denmark Vesey was a quintessential Charleston man because he represented the majority of the population here, which was a black population and an enslaved population. And he, through his actions, in an effort to organize a conspiracy, spoke to the aspirations of African people in this city, in this state, and indeed throughout the South in the early 19th century. He was a member of what was then known as the African Church in Charleston. And the African Church in Charleston was an independent African-American denomination in the city affiliated with the AME Church, or the African Methodist Episcopal Church, that had been founded in Philadelphia in 1816. This is a significant development and a significant point in history, because the black Charlestonians who created this church and affiliated with the AME Church in Philadelphia were essentially affiliating with an abolitionist church, and they were attempting to run their own affairs in the midst of a slaveholding society.
The city of Charleston, as several reverends pointed out, is known as the Holy City for its tolerant attitude toward different denominations. The name Holy City is also a reference to Jerusalem. Therefore, in this event, we can see a connection to African slaves who are the children of Israel and the Holy City of Jerusalem. When we take a look at the names involved, an interesting picture begins to come into focus. The name of the church is Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, and the name of the pastor who led the congregation is Clementa Pinckney. Emmanuel is the name of Messiah, and it means God is with us. African means black people of African descent. A Methodist is one who does things in accordance with a systematic and logical plan. Episcopal is a type of government of spiritual leaders or bishops who rule. Bishop means overseer and guardian. A church is a house of God, and according to 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 16, we are the temple or church in which God dwells. Clementa means mild, placid, and gentle, from clemency. Pinckney comes from pickaninny, which is a description of children of black descent, from pequeño, which means little. Therefore, Pinckney means little black children. The message here is as follows. Emmanuel, the Messiah, God is with us, the black people of African descent. He does things in accordance with a systematic and logical plan which is under his government and control. He reigns as the spiritual leader, overseer, and guardian of the church, who are the people of God. He is mild, gentle, and even-tempered. Therefore, God will show clemency, mercy, and compassion to the little black children. The suspect of the shooting was captured on 6/18/15. He was identified as 21-year-old Dylann Storm Roof, who was apprehended in Shelby, North Carolina. Remember this fact because we will come back to it later. The patches on Roof's jacket and his Facebook profile photo appeared to match the flag of apartheid-era South Africa and Rhodesia. Apartheid was the systematic racial segregation in South Africa which lasted from 1948 to 1994.
Apartheid in South Africa crumbled after Nelson Mandela walked to freedom, but black people suffered decades of government-backed injustice before it did. Apartheid really began in 1948, but separating black Africans from the white minority had long been a policy aim. Laws made white people officially superior, and the large black majority faced discrimination in every aspect of their lives.
It should be noted that on May 14th, 1948, the birth of the nation of Israel took place. It should also be noted that the Limba tribe of South Africa are black Hebrews, descendants of Israel who fled into Africa from the land of Israel after the destruction of the temple.
Here I am in South Africa, and there are these men wearing skull caps and talit, shoulder wraps. You would see this in any synagogue in America or Israel, but I never thought I'd see it here in South Africa.
I want to find out how these people seem to have Jewish customs. Samuel Moetti is president of the Lemba Cultural Association.
Pleasure. So, I'll be honest, I came into this village and the first word I heard was shalom,
yes.
A Hebrew word.
Yes.
How is that possible? How is it that the Lemba are speaking Hebrew?
The Lembas are the original Hebrews, and they were scattered, as you know, and they crossed into Africa. So they were scattered all over. So in South Africa, in many parts of South Africa, you find the Lembas who are actually Hebrews.
Hebrews. So the Lembas claim to be descendants of ancient Israelites?
Not claim, they are.
They are.
They are.
How ironic that in the same year that the New World Order, United Nations sanctioned the birth of Israel and the Rothschilds financed the Russian, Khazar, Ashkenazi descendant Jews to settle in the land of Israel, that the Limba tribe of South Africa, who are black Hebrews, were being victimized by the racist apartheid government. Dylann Storm Roof can be connected to the birth of a nation in another way as well. He was captured in Shelby, North Carolina, the birthplace of Thomas Dixon, who wrote The Klansman, which became the inspiration for the movie The Birth of a Nation. D.W. Griffith directed the 1915 movie The Birth of a Nation, based on the play by Thomas Dixon called The Klansman. The purpose of the film was to rewrite the history of the South and the Civil War. President Woodrow Wilson, a classmate of Dixon's, praised the Ku Klux Klan in his writings and is extensively quoted throughout the film. In time, the film shaped racial attitudes. School children were taken to see the film to learn history. More than 200 million people saw the film, and the revival of the Ku Klux Klan may have resulted from the racial attitudes that resulted from the fears that were shaped by this movie. Interestingly enough, Dylann Roof was born on April 3rd, 1994, and Thomas Dixon died April 3rd, 1946. 1994 is a mirror of 1946. A 51-year-old woman named Debbie Dills says God put her in position where she could help catch the alleged killer.
Well, I was nervous. I was scared. I'm normally not that kind of person. I got back on the bypass to go see just if I could just get a tag number just to see and make sure it just had a feeling, and I'm sure that was divine intervention. I've said it before, I'm going to say it here again. I feel like God had his hand in it, and that he had me where I needed to be. He had Todd there to help me get through.
Dylann Storm Roof was driving a black 1999 Hyundai Elantra when he was spotted by Debbie Dills near the town of Kings Mountain. When we take a deeper look at the meaning of the names involved here, once again, a message appears. Dylann means a great tide or surge. Storm means a violent disturbance or violence and tempest. Roof means peak, top, summit, or highest point. Black means darkness and evil. 1999 is a reference to the end of the world. Hyundai means modern times. Elantra comes from elatum, which means to lift up, exalt, to be puffed up, proud, and arrogant. Debbie means bee, which is a reference to Beelzebub or Satan. Dills means a two-seated tear. This is a reference to the Nephilim, a mixture of Satan's seed with the seed of man. This can be found in Genesis 6:4, Daniel 2:43, and Matthew 13:25. King's Mountain is a reference to Mount Zion, Israel. See Isaiah 24, verse 23. It should be noted that Mount Zion is a spiritual mirror of God's mountain in heaven, according to Galatians chapter 4, verse 26, and Hebrews chapter 12, verse 22. And according to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 13, Satan is trying to attempt to ascend into God's mountain. Therefore, the meaning here is as follows. There is a great tide or surge of violent disturbances. The violence has reached a summit. It is at its highest point.
White man opened fire inside a church in Charleston, killing 9 people.
It has been a bloody holiday weekend, a surge of shootings and murders across the city as police scrambling to respond to the violence.
This is the darkness and evil of modern times, which are the end times. Many have exalted themselves. They are puffed up, proud, and arrogant, like Beelzebub or Satan, the two-seated tear who declared that he would ascend to God's mountain. Because of the constant mistreatment of God's chosen people who are here in America under the curse of Deuteronomy 28, in the blatant disregard for God's precepts and laws, we are bearing witness to the death of the country called America. But very soon the world will bear witness to the birth of the chosen people of God, the physical descendants of Israel, and those who are the children of God, both through their faith in Christ. Are you a child of promise, an heir to the throne of the Most High? If you are not, because you have not given your life to Yah by accepting salvation through the blood sacrifice of Yehoshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, I urge you to do so now. The masses are being prepared for the death of a nation and the birth of the children of God. Which do you choose? life or death. Shalom.